Morning, everybody. Mr. Conlon, just with regard to your remarks of the OPW staff around the country, I'd agree that we have great staff around the country, and unfortunately it would appear that there are some staff in Dublin who have let them down, because I don't think these issues that we're facing here around the precincts of Leinster House actually occur around the country, and the disregard seems to be Dublin-based. So I'd like those comments on the record, Chair, because I know several OPW staff who carry out their work very diligently. I'm just going to start with the bike shelter, Mr. Conlon. And I note your commentary with regard to what you're doing going forward. And I also note that you weren't in the position of chair at the time when this was being carried out. I welcome the fact that you're in the position now. However, it is a bit like closing the door when the horse is bolted, unfortunately. And that's not just for the bike shelter, but for many projects going forward. I just want to ask, does the OPW prepare its own estimates on jobs such as the bike shelter before it goes out to tender?
Yes, as part of any project we deliver, Deputy, assessments are made of projected costs for projects.
So what was the projected cost for the bike shelter pre-tender?
Pre-tender, there was an order of magnitude costing in the order of 350,000, Deputy.
So it actually came in less?
Than that order of magnitude costing.
Okay, and it didn't raise any red flags? Okay. So the problem is, though, that the excuses given for that type of elaborate structure, because I've no doubt that the materials that are in it warrant the cost. Whether the bike shelter itself was warranted in such elaborate fashion is certainly the question that hasn't been answered, because the answer is no for everybody, it appears, except yourself and the OPW. We have nobody taken responsibility. The Commission haven't taken responsibility. The Minister unequivocally says it had nothing to do with him. And that then means, in your own regard, at the committee last week, you said that the OPW didn't want to finger anybody, point the finger at any one particular individual. Is that correct?
I'm the accountable officer, Deputy, for the OPW.
You weren't even in the position, Mr. Conlon.
I'm aware of that, but I am the accountable officer now.
Yeah.
And in my review that was prepared and published, I think on the 24th of September, I was quite candid in saying that the level of expenditure on this project was not consistent with the scale of the project under consideration. That is a covered bicycle facility, so I was quite candid in that respect.
Can you explain to me, though, you said there was a heritage prospect to the whole project, in that it's in the confines of Leinster House and we had to look at it from that perspective. How much did that cost?
It definitely, Deputy, drove the costs that were realised in this project, because due regard was had by the team to the conservation aspects of the area they were working in, the historic buildings of Leinster House. And
were those conservation aspects given to the two roan cabins that are outside the back door of the Leinster House at the same time? Because it looks to me like they're two ordinary, very ordinary roan cabins that you'd get in the middle of any haulier's yard in the country. So I just don't see where the correlation is between the roan cabins and this bike shelter.
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
They're at the back door on the opposite side. They're porta cabins, sorry. They're ordinary roan porta cabins. Yeah. You haven't seen them, have you not?
Well, the context of the bike shelter was in the context of the Marion Square side of it.
Well, this is the Marion Square side. It's the same side. It's the back door of this actual building. Yeah. Right outside the back door.
Yeah. Well, I've been quite candid in my review, Deputy.
No, but are you familiar with those roan cabins?
I am, yeah.
You are. You're familiar with them, the porta cabins. And yet you persist in telling us that there was a heritage element to the bike shelter. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that, Mr. Conlon?
Well, when I conducted my review of that project, Deputy, I spoke to all the officials involved, I spoke to people in the House of Directors Commission. It developed the way it did because of the conservation aspects of it, and I reported that in my review.
But it's beginning to sound very much just like an excuse. And I suggest you're running out of excuses. And the problem with not having accountability is that this is likely to happen again and again and again, which is the history of the OPW. And as far as I've researched, going back 30 years. So there hasn't been much improvement. So based on you are in a position now to cure it. And you will be back here next year, Mr. Conlon. I may or may not. But if I am, I will be reminding you, and I will be checking everything that has come under your remit? Because if we don't get accountability, this whole committee is pointless.
I am very, very conscious of that, and
I'm going to move on. I just want to say in relation to the OPW's land banks and modular builds, and how much land do you actually own or is within the OPW? Lands for building houses.
in terms of properties we have available.
No, not properties, land.
Properties and land for housing, it is quite limited. Can I ask Ms Morrison to address that, and I can come back in, Deputy?
Yes, thanks, John. Thanks, Deputy. We have very little vacant sites that are available, Deputy, that would be suitable for building houses. We have, at all times, we support other departments like the Department of Integration, the Land Development Agency, and agencies like that that have more direct responsibility for the provision of housing. If we have identified any surplus lands that we make available, they're made available to other state agencies under the protocols that are laid out by the Department of Public Expenditure. And we have quite a good track record in terms of making lands and buildings available to other agencies in that regard over the last number of years.
So why then, Ms Morrison, maybe it's Mr Conlon, did the planning permission lapse on the former Department of Health headquarters this year?
In relation to Hawkins House, Deputy, that the previous building there was demolished in 2021. We have currently...
I'm sorry, Mr Conlon, on the basis of timeline, the question is, why did you allow the planning permission to lapse? Why did you not look for an extension on the planning?
We will consider future planning for that site, Deputy.
No, Mr Conlon, how much did the planning cost for the site? How much was the planning application, as in submitted? How much did it cost?
I don't have that information with
me. Well, I need that
Chair.
figure. I'm surprised you don't have that figure. That figure is fundamental to what we're talking about in a housing crisis. So if you could have that figure probably before the break, somebody would be able to submit it. But the question again now, and I'm putting it again, is why did you allow the planning to lapse and not seek an extension? Because usually planning of this realm is in the hundreds of thousands, and it's not a difficult process to have it extended.
No, I acknowledge that. And in terms of the future use of Hawkins House...
Mr Conlon, will you answer the question I asked, please, or I'll ask the Chair to intervene. Why did you not seek an extension?
I wasn't in office at that time, Deputy. I think it was a mere oversight.
Maybe Ms Morrison is aware as to why there wasn't an extension. Is there anybody here who understands why the planning wasn't extended?
I can come in on that, Deputy. The planning that we achieved at the time in 2017 was actually for an office block on that site of the...
It wasn't just an office block?
Our planning was...
Just an office block?
Just an office block, yes.
And you could have made an alteration application?
That was under consideration in around April 21 and 22.
So how much did it cost, Ms Morrison?
I don't have that figure either, Deputy.
Who does?
We will have to get it for you.
Right, so you'll get that figure.
Yeah.
So why wasn't, so really, Mr Conlon, is it because you weren't in the position is it a pointless exercise asking any question?
No.
So why wasn't the site sold with planning permission?
We will consider future uses for that site, Deputy. It is a valuable site in the city centre that will require due consideration. We're not going to make a decision to sell it without due regard to our future portfolio requirements.
But you had planning permission on it for 7 years, nearly 8 years.
That is correct.
Yeah, and yet there was nobody ever entertained the idea of allowing somebody else to build on that site.
No, but we will consider future uses for that site.
Well, I should hope so, because given your record on modular builds, it probably isn't something that we should consider for the taxpayer's sake. Now, let's go to the modular build. At this committee previously, we were told, as you heard from the CNAG, an estimated costing for 500 units was going to cost 100 million. We're nearly 3 times that figure. And I remember asking the question, what sites were being used? I was told that the sites being provided were sites that were not suitable to build houses on.
That is correct.
That's correct. And yet you're now saying these are state assets and can be used in the future for
Correct.
social housing.
Correct.
Are these modular bills Part M compliant? Because I'm reliably informed that they're not, even though I see Miss Collier nodding her head. Now, do you know what Part M is, Mr. Conlon?
In terms of building regulations?
Yeah, but do you know which regulation it pertains to?
Not specifically, but I'm advised that they are fully compliant with building regulations.
Well, they're not wheelchair compliant, apparently. Now, is there anyone here who can categorically say that they are? Now, Miss Collier, you were nodding your head there, but you've stopped. Does that mean you can't categorically say that they are wheelchair compliant?
No, I can concur with the chairman. We understand them to meet the building regs, which includes Part M.
And who inspected them? Do we have, when you say Part M, I'm reliably informed that they're not. And I'm also reliably informed that they're not Part NZ compliant. Now, can you sign off here at this committee meeting to say that they are or they aren't? Because I believe the rating, the BER rating, is significantly lower than what a 3-bed meeting the regulations would be. So what's the BER rating on the modular bills, Mr.
Existing modular bills that are in place, Deputy, are rated at C1. They are designed to be A2. And once we get the PV facilities in, they will be A2. And that
What's the PV facility?
These are to allow the solar panels to be installed, to allow the photovoltaic solar panels to be installed, and then they will be A2 rated.
And is that cost included? Or is that extra on the 442,000?
That is under negotiation at the moment with the contractor.
Hold on now, Mr. Conlon, don't move too fast on this one, because when you say it's under consideration, that would mean it is on top of the 442,000.
We expect it to be met from within the 285 million project costs.
Now, Mr. Conlon, that doesn't sound like confidence to me. It means that it's under negotiation whereby there seems to be a discussion or a disagreement, is there?
I wouldn't say disagreement.
Now is your time to give us the facts. Now.
I would not say disagreement, Deputy. We are consulting with the developer or with the contractor to install these across all the units, beginning with the Clonmel site in the near future, to be met from within the 285 million budget for the project.
Well, we were at 289 million is what the actual project is. Is this the same person that was contracted to provide the modular build? Is it a different contractor providing the solar panels?
John Six are the contractor, and they will be providing the facilities for the PV panels.
Okay, so you are categorically saying that you, as the chair of the OPW, are telling this committee and the public in general that the final cost of the modular build at an A1 rating, including solar panels fitted, is €442,000.
It will be A2 rated, Deputy.
A2.
And we expect it to come in the overall project estimate of 285 million.
That's not the question. 442,000 is the cost per unit currently. Are you saying that's without the fitting of the solar panels, but even when that's completed, the cost is not going to change?
We expect the solar panels to cost approximately 5,800
Will
per
the
unit.
cost change, Mr. Conlon, from 442,000 per unit?
I don't expect it to go above that figure, Deputy.
So you expect it to stay the same?
Correct.
And that's an undertaking then that we have, that we will come in, even though it's 3 times over the initial budget. Tell me, Mr. Conlon, what exactly happened that there was an estimate of 100 million that ended up nearly 3 times that?
It was, as the CNG has outlined, I think, fairly and clearly in his report, that was an initial estimate done. And remember, this was a very dynamic process in an emergency response situation.
Well, it didn't turn out to be much of an emergency response. It took nearly 20 months longer to put them in place. So just before I run out of time, and I will be coming back in, the question with regards to the site, were those sites ever zoned for housing or serviced in any shape or form? And was the 100 million a cost that went out to tender to CISC, or did CISC come in with that price? if we could just answer those, Chair.
In terms of the zoning, Deputy, I'm not clear, but in terms of the service sites, very few, and let's be clear about this, very few of the sites were adequately serviced, which gave rise to the huge cost escalation because of the poor site conditions and servicing. We had to go and get these sites developed to a state where they could be serviced properly, which gave rise to the significant cost escalation on this.
There'll be an opportunity to come back.
Well, I think just to finish that point, though, the 100 million euros, was that an amount that was tendered, or was that the amount that was the proposal of the cost of the project given to CISC?
That was the initial proposal, Deputy.
So did CISC tender for 100 million euros?
As I understand it, Deputy, when the tender went out, it gave rise to, not to the 100 million, but to higher costs subsequently. And it was tendered in such a way that it was kind of a dynamic environment where we used a particular former contract which allowed them to develop and bill us. So as the costs increased for various reasons outlined, that happened.
So it was an open-ended
Deputy,
contract?
I'll allow you back in,
Yeah.
and I'm sure others will pick up on this point as well. Deputy.